All right, so the first video in the series, well, second video besides the intro, is going to be clothing. So clothing, you can break that down as a family of technology into three areas. And I just call them protection, sleeping, and shelter. So the protection level is literally the clothing I have on me. And depending on your campaign parameters, your third line, you might need a wicking layer. In Michigan during the fall and winter, the wicking layer is your most important at first. You think about long underwear. You want to avoid cotton. Cotton kills. You want to avoid straight wool because wool itches and you'll kill yourself after a few days. Silk is great, but stinks after a while. And then there's some different polypropylene type underwear that pull it off, pull the sweat away from you. Then a warming layer, and then an outer layer. Outer layer is going to be your basically your coat or your jacket or your hoodie. Typically, because I run warm, just go with my UV uniform shirt and a pair of shorts. But protection is going to go to your footwear too. We spend a lot of time barefoot, but that's not always going to be the best choice for the situation we're in, like in the winter. So a good pair of boots. You don't want to be too heavy or too stiff. And the less you can put between your feet and the environment, the better. So a pair of Merrells or these little barefoot or trail gloves. These are my camping shoes. I don't need stiff boots for hiking. I don't carry that heavy, and my feet are strong. So this is kind of the foot protection I would take. Sometimes I take a pair of water socks for the winter. So if I get out of my hammock, I don't want to put my boots on, just pull on a pair of water socks or just barefoot it for a minute. A good pair of winter boots is great. Sometimes you can go with sandals. There's different ways to protect your feet, but that's kind of very important. So we're going to start all our packing with what I'm wearing on my back. So that's my basic clothing. Now, in addition to just what I'm wearing, I want to make sure I take a hat of some sort. Typically, hats fall into two types, a sun hat or a warm hat. Again, that would depend on the environment of the season you're going. Not a fan of baseball hats because they leave your ears and neck exposed. A good boonie hat that's got this rim all around it, or one of those really big brimmed hats. The good thing about my boonie hat is I can crunch this down. I can smash this down. It holds its shape. I can throw it in a pocket or the top of my pack. And then I can use it for different things. So we want to have a lot of redundancy in our gear. I can set my boonie hat down and pick berries or sort out gear. Or maybe, this has happened before, break my glasses, my lens pops out. So I keep all the pieces in my boonie hat while I work on those little screws so I don't drop it in the dirt. Lots of uses for a boonie hat. Can't recommend it enough. Love my hat. This is not, however, going to keep me too warm in the winter, although I can pair it with my silk, but a good sun hat. And then a good warming hat. And of course, I forgot my hat, but you can always use your buff, which we'll talk about in a minute. You just put your buff on your head and keep that as a warming hat. But a good wool hat that's dry to sleep in is awesome. You can combine your silk over your head with your sun hat, and that'll keep you warm. So a good hat or a pair of hats is important as a piece of baseline gear. And then a pair of gloves, even if you don't use them or need them. You just throw a pair of leather gloves. I got these from Home Depot for like less than 10 bucks, and they're just some kind of pigskin or deerskin glove, just full grain pigskin leather. This will last probably for years. Just the bottom of my bag, they don't take up any extra room. I can use these to grab a hot pot out of the fire. I can use these to clear brambles or firewood. Lots of uses for gloves. You can slip them on if I'm frozen at night, and they provide a little bit extra warmth. Here's another pair of gloves I just sort of have been carrying for a while. And then something that I am a big guilty of overlooking is a pair of sunglasses. Could put these under salt needle for eye protection, eye care, but I just leave them under protection because I've been trying to remember more and more. I just grab these out of the Jeep. You can get better sunglasses than these, but a pair of sunglasses, especially in Michigan when you get a lot of albedo off the winter snow, that can be quite damaging to your eyes if you're out there for a while, risk snow blindness. So have a pair of sunglasses with you or a pair of clip-on shades, or sometimes we can even show you how to do the little Inuit slit glasses. You can make those out of duct tape or a piece of cloth or your Moreygami. But having a pair of sunglasses with you is a great idea. Now, speaking of Moreygami, this is just a piece of multi-use cloth, typically cotton. You can have a shemagh style piece of cloth. You can carry this in your bag. You can use it for a pillow, a towel. No end of uses for the Moreygami. We got plenty of videos on those. Always have at least one cotton in your kit, one silk Moreygami. Typically that comes with our uniform, but silk has no end of uses. And I like to carry a wool in my kit in the winter. I have a shemagh-sized wool one. And then two specialized pieces of Moreygami is the buff, which is a small microfiber tube of clothing. Multiple uses. I can just keep that on my wrist. I can use that to wipe sweat. I can use it as an improvised bag. I can stuff things in, use it as a pillow, keep my head hot, keep my head warm, keep my head cool. No end of uses for a buff, and it just goes in a pocket. And then something I don't see a lot of other groups, just UV, we call it a hood. It's basically a giant buff. Right? So I always have one of these with me, even on my day hikes, just a giant buff really, but it's made of cotton. So I can use this for a lot of things. Cool off, it's a towel, it's usually my pillow, and it's my emergency clothing. So if I fall in the river and I got to stand around drying my clothing out, I can wear this to preserve some modesty, mostly for everybody else's benefit, not mine. But I'll put this on, wear it like a skirt. I can wear it like a little shawl or a sweater in the morning. Again, no end of uses to the hood. You can check out some videos on that. I think we just put one up the other day. I showed how to use the hood to make a chair, just a quick hammock chair. So those Moreygamis and your clothing you're wearing is your first layer of protection of clothing. And then in your kit, I would recommend throwing some extra clothing. But to me, extra clothing is really, really minimalist. So I just have this little waterproof bag, and in there, hey, there's my buff. In there, I keep my buff, which I don't usually need. In the winter, I would keep a pair of dry socks or these little I don't know what you call these, little neoprene socks. So I wear these to bed at night so I can walk around the snow without having to tie my boots. The buff goes in there. This is just for winter. But I always keep three things in my extra clothing bag: a buff, an extra pair of dry wool socks. Again, I use these as mittens sometimes. I use them as dry socks. I sleep in them. I keep a pair of silkies, which is just a little pair of ranger panties. It's silk underwear. I use this as my swimming trunks if I need it. I use it as an extra pair of underwear if I need to change out if we're gone for 3 or 4 days. Sometimes it's too hot to sleep in Michigan, so I'll sleep at night, so I'll sleep in these instead of my full kit. And then another piece I throw in the winter, another piece of clothing, is something dry to sleep in for my core. I used to use this, I should have brought it, just a thin merino wool sweater. Logan, you've seen that thing. I got it at the store for like $1 years ago, and it wadded up real small. It was real thin, but it was just enough for me to have a wool sweater. For my wife, she takes an actual wool sweater, like the one she brought back from Scotland. It's gigantic, probably weighs 7 pounds, but boy, she sleeps warm. Even just an extra shirt, or in my case, I've got this little vest from Columbia with their Omni Heat technology in there. So you got those little like reflective pads. This is my sleeping, my extra sleeping gear for the winter. Because usually during the day, I'm just wearing my shirt and I get kind of wet. I'll strip this off at night, put on the sweater, the dry socks, and the buff on my head, and that's how I sleep. So having some extra clothing, in addition to the clothing you're wearing, is important. Do you need to take a full change of clothes? No. Do you even need this extra bag of clothes? I would consider that the minimum, an extra pair of underwear, extra pair of socks, and one extra shirt or something to sleep in to keep your core warm, especially if you spend all day wet. And then a supply of Moreygamis. That's the bulk of my clothing. And then I usually just wear the same thing if I'm going for 3 days or less. I'll just wear the same clothing. So that's basically all you need to pack for clothing, or some different options. And then the next part, next video, we're going to talk about your sleeping and shelter.